We are very excited tonight. My wife and I, we've been wanting to do this for quite a few years, but to write a testimony, it takes work, right? So we finally put the work in. My name is Josh, and I'm in recovery for sexual addiction, and I'm an adult child of a dysfunctional family.
My name is Beatrice, and I'm in recovery for codependency, and I'm a child of a dysfunctional family.
Tonight we stand in front of you, an addict and a codependent, sharing about the dysfunctional traits we have carried in our lives and ultimately into our marriage and the healing work that Jesus, through recovery, has done and continues to do.
I was born to an alcoholic dad, and my mom died after 3 years since I was born. This left me being raised by my very strict Catholic grandma. We attended church for a couple of years, but I grew up being afraid of God and not really understanding anything about Jesus and who he was. After Mom died, Dad left us in my country of birth for a few years until he was able to bring us to the States with him. During this time, I spent a lot of time unsupervised with very little nurturing and lots of times of surviving difficult circumstances, which included poverty, sexual abuse, bullying, and many physical symptoms of anxiety and fear. At the age of 8, I came to the States and life became more stable. But the anxiety, abandonment, and fear had already strong roots, and I wouldn't deal with them until I came into recovery in my mid-20s. I worked hard to look strong and in control on the outside, while internally remaining very immature, fearful, and troubled. I leaned into boys for security, becoming promiscuous and living a double life. One at home, where I followed my family's rules, and another at school, where I would do anything to fit in and secure a relationship with males to help me feel better about myself.
I grew up in a family that loved Jesus and directed me to Jesus from a young age. My mom was very loving, yet often manipulative and controlling. She would often use strong emotions to get her way, including crying, self-pity, and anything that would make us feel sorry for her. This worked for most people, but it had the opposite effect on me. Instead of feeling compassion and guilt, I started despising and dismissing emotions, not only from her, but from all women in my life. My dad was loving in his own way, and we often bonded through sports, and he would love to compliment me and my brother often, but he lacked skills in relationships and was often easily angered and had moments of irrational behavior. Once he got there, it was impossible to reason with him. Needless to say, in our family, we never dealt with conflict. And very early in my life, I avoided conflict at all cost. During this time, at the age of 12, I found a pornography magazine in the bushes, which started a secret addiction, and this addiction would be a stronghold for the next 20 years of my life.
At the age of 18, and against the advice of everyone around me, I moved out with my boyfriend, got pregnant, married, and immediately attempted to live the life I would see others live. Proverbs 1:7 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." A family, a job, a house, all those things that others seem to do so easily around me didn't come easily to me at all. My husband and I, first, we fought continuously. I would judge him, shame him, and demand things as if I knew best. He would try to please me, but because my demands were so out of touch with reality, of course, he failed me time and time again. Our relationship became abusive both ways, and after a painful miscarriage following my previous patterns, I looked for comfort in a coworker of mine. An emotional affair took place, and this selfish action led me to a divorce. After breaking our family apart, I would continue in this other unhealthy relationship for 2 more years. 2 years of darkness, loneliness, fighting, using substances, leaving my son to pursue my drug of choice, this man. My life had become a wreck, and the only common denominator in all these things was me.
At the age of 21, I decided I was ready for marriage. To be To my first wife, who was 18 years old. Even though we both had Jesus in our lives, I was a young man with a porn addiction and a tendency to run away from conflict. Not good in a marriage. It's not a good recipe. During this time, I was a youth pastor, and my wife served alongside of me. I spent a lot of my time and energy in serving and pleasing others in ministry, while putting my wife's needs last. We had some good moments in ministry, but the marriage behind closed doors consisted of verbal attacks, constant fighting, and she often wanted to deal with conflict and pursued me often throughout the house. I, in turn, wanted nothing to do with the conflict and would often run away and even push her to escape from being cornered. I had a wife crying out for emotional intimacy, and I did what I learned from a young age, dismiss it, and thought she would get over it. Our lives continued like this for 7 years until the shocking reality hit me when I received divorce papers and learned that my wife had been in an affair for a year.
I found myself defeated and for the first time open to suggestions. One of the suggestions I received was from a counselor who suggested I attend a Christian church. So I did. I walked into Big Valley Grace, and for the first time in my life, I heard about God's love and mercy, Jesus' sacrifice for me, and the gift of salvation. How did I live my whole life not knowing these things? How did I survive for so long not knowing that I was wonderfully made in His image, rejecting my Creator? No wonder that my life had been empty and such a mess. I started to attend Celebrate Recovery at the same time, and for the first time in my life, I admitted all those horrible things that I was doing, all the things that had been done to me, and the many regrets that I had. People listened. No one judged. They all looked at me with a look that said, "We know," and keep coming back. Through a step study, I was able to deal with so many of the layers of the past, acknowledge the horrible habits that I had built, forgive others and even myself. I wrote letters of amends and paid money back where I had stolen it. With Jesus in my heart, I was now sensitive to the things that I had become hardened to. My son and I became a family for the first time. We had a home, and I was learning how to be a good mom. I had a sponsor who knew me in and out, a Bible study group, women in my life that I was leaning into for wisdom and companionship. I lived this life of healing and serving as a single woman for 6 years, falling in love with my Jesus and embracing a community of recovery people in the same journey that I was in. At the 6th year of this, the Lord would open another unexpected door for me.
At the age of 28, I found myself in a new city, a new church, a new job, dealing with the reality of my new divorce status. I struggled with this shame of being a Christ follower and feeling like I failed to keep a marriage covenant. Along with this came loneliness, as day after day I was coming home to an empty house. Although the fighting and conflict of my marriage was no longer present, I continued to fall into moments of pornography use and over drinking alcohol. I was attending Big Valley and would often see in the bulletin that they had a Celebrate Recovery and Grief Share class. I would think to myself, I could benefit from going there. But instead, I did what I do best, running stuff. At the new job I had, there were many opportunities for me to get busy. I started coaching, volunteering, helping out after school. The ministry and relationships I built during this time were a blessing, and I enjoyed them very much. But in the end, it was another Band-Aid to my core issues. After a couple of years of this, I met a girl on a blind date.
A blind date, of all things, for someone who struggles with anxiety. Josh and I met through mutual friends who encouraged us to get to know one another, as they believed we had so much in common, and more specifically, our love for the Lord and passion for people. They were correct, and after dating for about a year and lots of prayer, we got married. There was a lot of preparing we did for this season of life: premarital counseling, I met with my sponsor throughout it and continued to work on my steps. We had a community of friends around us, helping us and keeping us accountable. It was a good start. Plus, I had 6 years of practice at working recovery. We're both older and more mature than in our first marriage. I was certain that this time it was going to be much easier than before. But easier is not what happened.
The end, we're good. The blind date was a hit. And B and I started dating. She was involved in this recovery thing and invited me, and I, of course, said sure. I figured I would be supportive of her. I attended large group with her for about a year and would leave and not attend open share for the whole year. I'm really grateful that B didn't pressure me to work a recovery program, but instead gave me the space to figure this out on my own. After a year, I joined a step study, and this set me on a Christ-centered discipleship program I had never experienced before. I had been part of many spiritual programs, many. I grew up in the church, but none like this. I had walked with God my whole life and knew what his word said about walking in truth and confessing and forgiving and making amends. And even though I worked in ministry, I had never experienced some of these things at the heart level. And this process taught me how to do that. The openness and transparency in the group was something I always wanted, but didn't get to be a part of until then. This is also when I started attending Open Share group and got a sponsor. We were set. She loved Jesus. I loved Jesus. She was in recovery. I was in recovery. What could possibly go wrong?
Our first year in marriage, I found myself feeling uncared for, unloved, misunderstood, and full of fear and anxiety that our marriage would not last. The friendship that we had worked so hard to build during our dating time, all of a sudden, had turned into expectations of my husband and an idealistic idea of what I thought our marriage should look like. I didn't understand. I was attending meetings throughout the week, meeting with my sponsor, spending time with Jesus, working the steps, but nothing seemed to help the intensity that had suddenly returned. It's not like I had lost all the recovery I had worked so hard for, but it seemed like the tools were not helping to make this any better. I felt the same way I felt as a newcomer, with very little hope, lots of fear, lots of doubt, and lost. What I didn't know is that this was the beginning of God using this season of my life to reveal and heal a new layer of brokenness.
As we moved into marriage, I was excited about having a family with my new wife and becoming a new dad of an 8-year-old. But quickly the excitement lessened as I found myself married for a second time, believing that the marriage dysfunctions would be different, and finding that they all had returned. And I began running from the problems once again, and I got myself busy with ministry. The same, wherever I go. As my wife brought up issues in our marriage, I would dismiss them. From my perspective, she was creating the disunity in the marriage. Therefore, she was the problem, which was far from the truth. In fact, at times believing that she truly was the problem and knowing that if she just worked her steps, that would just go away. I would tell her, maybe you need to call your sponsor. Sorry to say it, but I think I said that more than once. That didn't go well. I have a perfect verse for this one to go directly with that comment. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, and I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, I put up childish ways. 1 Corinthians 13:11. As you can see, I was very much stuck as a child in a man's body. God had some work to do.
I'm thankful for the people we had around us during this time who continually pointed us to Jesus and to hang in there and trust that God was doing something in us, even if we couldn't see it at the time. During this time, I had to hold on to Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not in your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. A couple of years into our marriage, and after lots of fighting, lots of surrendering, lots of inventories, forgiving, making amends, and starting all over again, our oldest son faced some serious struggles in his life. And all of a sudden, not only were we dealing with our problems, but with blended family problems with a very hurt and rebellious teenager and 2 other little new ones at home. One day, following our typical pattern, I felt desperate for healing and connection in our relationship. I pursued my husband, asking him to deal with some of the issues we had. He refused, and I stomped around the house following him, demanding that he meet my needs. I found him ready to watch TV. In a moment of rage, I threw my metal water bottle, breaking the TV and scaring myself and my husband with my behavior. I called my sponsor in guilt and shame. She again guided me through the steps to ask for forgiveness and amends. This helped us in the moment, of course, but I was becoming more desperate for change. Sorry.
Yeah, she's doing great. Good job, babe. During this time, I dove deeper into my recovery, and at the suggestion of my sponsor, I started attending 90 meetings in 90 days. He also suggested that I go through the Big Book of AA and journal about the Big Book of AA. Through this process, I realized that I found sobriety in the main issue that brought me to recovery, sexual addiction, but was now faced with finding emotional sobriety through my relationships. The sexual addiction was a major way for me to numb the feelings of inadequacy and feeling out of control. As I dove into connecting more of my childhood brokenness with my adult issues, I realized that I was seeing my wife's emotions the same as my mom. I perceived my mom used it for manipulation. Therefore, I lived believing my wife was doing the same. Living life under the assumption gave me an out, so I didn't have to look at myself. And for someone who's trying to work a recovery program, this is not going to work.
You can see, for someone who struggles with emotion, this is a problem. At this time, it was suggested that I help start another group here at CR called Adult Child of Dysfunctional Families. I immediately read the literature and found myself identifying with so many of the traits given to adult children of dysfunctional families. Adult children of dysfunctional families become isolated and afraid of people and authority figures. They are often frightened by angry people and any personal criticism. Adult children are dependent personalities who are terrified of abandonment. I also read the definition. An adult child is defined as someone whose actions and decisions as an adult are guided by childhood experiences grounded in self-doubt or fear. This was definitely the case for me. I was again being ruled by fear and reacting like a helpless, angry child. As I expressed these things in my group, I was not shamed for them, but instead encouraged to grieve the losses that I was discovering and let the grieving bring healing into my life. This led me to admitting that I am powerless over the childlike behaviors that were sabotaging my marriage. Back to step one.
As B started dealing with her adult child issues, lots of emotions came with that. And if you remember, I don't do well with emotion. However, I love my wife, and I knew I wanted to overcome this. I leaned into my support group to help me stay present with her and not run away. They were able to speak truth into my stinking thinking, which for me is often having a victim mindset and self-pity. They hear my relationship issues and get me quickly to look at myself. My sponsor once told me, "My wife is not wrong, just different." I don't know how many lines I've had to say that over and over and over and over again. This new perspective has helped me to engage with B during these times, even when it's scary for me. Another thing I had to come to terms was that I married into a blended family. And with that came blended family issues. Up until now, we have been operating under the traditional roles of being the man, the leader, and main disciplinarian of the home. But this was not working for our blended family. And for us, this meant that B had to take on the primary role of disciplinarian with our oldest, as she is the biological parent. This was extremely difficult for me to release, and I had to deal with feeling out of control and work in trusting her, my son, and God, and all of that. That was my step one.
The wonderful thing about 12 steps is that they're applicable to all areas of our life. Because I had been working the steps in other areas of my life, once the layer of adult-child issues started to peel, it was a great relief to be able to work the steps through that. I learned during this time that my critical nature towards myself and others was adapted very early in my life in order to survive. And though it was easy to shame myself for it, which I had been doing for years, instead, I needed to be brave and nurture those needs that I had for so long neglected. I forgave the adults in my life who struggled to meet my needs. I invited Jesus into those areas of myself which were still a scared little girl, and opened my heart to repentance and forgiveness in a deeper way that I hadn't known yet. I started being brave and admitting that I'm scared often, and admitting that due to my childhood experiences, I often don't really know what is normal. I'm afraid of rejection, and I'm terrified of abandonment. And I often confuse someone's look, their body language, or a simple no with pain and panic that I felt as a child. ACDF has led me to some reparenting in these areas, inviting the perfect parent, Jesus, to be the model for love and acceptance that I long for. God continues to show me that there is no person, no place, or thing that will ever fill what only He can. Today, I can often still feel the physical symptoms that living with anxiety, PTSD, fear, and panic for most of my life have left. But I'm better able to identify them and not lash out to my loved ones. At least not as often.
We still need the 12 steps. So we just keep coming back. I witnessed my wife firsthand getting better, individually and within our relationship. What she was doing as she worked her 12-step adult-child stuff, it was really, really working. As B and I continue to deepen our intimacy in marriage, I find myself continuously going back to steps 4 and 5 to deal with hurts and resentments so they don't build up and cause disunity between us. I'm a stuffer, and so I can easily not deal with it. I had to see my part of the brokenness because I have a tendency to dismiss or minimize my part of the dysfunction. And the other steps I have to keep in front of me are steps 8 and 9, which is forgiving and making amends. As we are two broken human beings who often fall short. When I do, I repeat the process and I use my support team and the 12 steps to see the situation with wisdom and not through a childlike mentality. Make no mistake, I can go back to acting like a child. To those of you who might identify with us in a blended family, I'd like to say, hang in there. You're not alone. Find other families who can walk alongside with this journey with you. There's great, wise, sound Bible studies to help you along the road. Use the 12 steps of recovery to keep working through the issues that arise. They do work. And when you feel discouraged, remember that Jesus knows your pain. After all, he too was part of a blended family.
To anyone struggling with emotional sobriety, may you continue to pursue Jesus and his word with all your heart. Romans 12:2 in the Bible says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." I encourage you to be open about the internal struggles that you may have and may not be as obvious as an outward addiction, but can often be even more detrimental and long-lasting. To the newcomer, we are glad that you're here. Regardless of how you got here, we hope you know how important you are to us and everyone here today. No matter where you find yourself today, there is hope, and many here who want to share that hope and walk the journey of healing with you. Keep coming back. Connect with people. Find a sponsor. Meet with Jesus often. Work the steps. And when you're done with that, connect with more people. Call your sponsor again. Meet with Jesus some more and work the steps. Thank you so much for letting us share what God continues to do in our marriage with us today.
Thank you so much. You know, marriage is one of those tough relationships that a lot of us have had to wrestle with. And so let's not forget to use those 12 steps, even within marriage, and use our support team in all those areas that are desperately needed. And so would you stand with us as we say the Serenity Prayer together? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking as Jesus did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever the next. Amen. You'll see the focus question there. It's in your relationships. How do you create dysfunction? And how can recovery help with that? First timers, right through those doors. Second timers, right up here. Let's go to group. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.